Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Our today's question on linked list is intersection point in Y-shaped linked list. The question states that given two singly linked lists of size n and m, write a program to get the point where two linked lists intersect each other. Let's have a look at the examples. In example 1, the linked list 1 is 3, 6, 9, 15, 30 and linked list 2 is 10, 15, 30. So as we can see in the figure, the intersection point here is 15. So the output will be 15. In case of example 2, the linked list 1 is 41845 and linked list 2 is 561845. So here the intersection point is 8, so the output will be 8. So the intuition behind solving this problem is that we first store the length of both the linked list in two variables, namely length1 and length2. Then we have two temporary variables, namely temp1 and temp2, which are pointed to the heads of both the linked list. We calculate the difference in the size of both the linked list and we move further the temporary pointer of that linked list which was greater in length up to different number of times. Then we keep on incrementing both the temporary pointers, namely temp1 and temp2, until we reach a condition where both point to the same node. And when both point to the same node, that is our actual intersection point. So now let's have a look at the approach to solve this particular problem. Let's consider an example of two linked lists which are 3, 6, 9, 15, 30 and 10, 15, 30. So we have few variables declared, namely length1 and length2, which are initialized to 0, which are used to store the lengths of linked list 1 and linked list 2 respectively. We have another variable called difference. The right side of the screen shows the algorithm which contains the function intersection point, whose arguments are the two head variables, namely head1 and head2 of linked list 1 and 2 respectively. We create two temporary node pointers and point them to head1 and head2. So we begin our algorithm with a while loop where we check whether if temp1 is not equal to null. Since this condition is true, therefore we update the value of temp1 as temp1 of next and increment the value of length1. Again we check whether if temp1 is not equal to null, which is true. So again we update the value of temp1 as temp1 of next and increment the value of length1. So we continue this process until we reach temp1 as null while traversing the linked list 1. So finally we have reached temp1 as null, so we exit the while loop and start another while loop for traversing the linked list 2, where we check whether if temp2 is not equal to null, which is also true. So we update the value of temp2 as temp2 of next and increment the value of length2. So again we continue this process until we reach temp2 as null. So temp2 is null now and the value of length2 is 3. So we exit the while loop again. Then we point temp1 and temp2 to the head1 and head2 respectively, and then calculate the absolute difference between length1 and length2. So the value of difference is 2. Then we check whether if linked list 1 is greater or linked list 2 is greater. Since in our case the value of length1 is greater than length2, therefore linked list 1 was greater. So we move the temp1 variable frontwards up to different number of counts. That is, for I is equal to 0 to difference, initial value of I is 0, we update temp1 as temp1 of next. Again the value of I is incremented and again we update temp1 as temp1 of next. So now the value of I is 2, which is not less than difference. Therefore we exit the for loop and we start another while loop where we check whether if both the temporary variables are not equal. Since temp2 is not equal to temp1, therefore we simultaneously update the value of temp1 as temp1 of next and temp2 as temp2 of next. Again we check whether if temp1 is not equal to temp2, but in this case both these pointers point to the same node. Therefore we return from the while loop and we return the value temp1 of data. So we return the value 15 as our intersection point. So now let's have a look at our actual code. The driver code is already given and we just need to complete the function intersection point, whose arguments are the variables head1 and head2. So as we have seen in the explanation part, we have few variables, namely length1, length2 and difference. And we created two temporary node variables, namely temp1 and temp2, and we have pointed them to head1 and head2 respectively. So the first while loop is to calculate the length of linked list 1 and the second while loop is to calculate the length of linked list 2, which are stored in two variables, namely length1 and length2. Then we point both the temporary variables to head1 and head2 and calculate the absolute difference value as difference is equal to ABS of length1 and length2. Then we check whether if linked list 1 is greater or linked list 2 is greater. If linked list 1 is greater, then the first if condition is true, where we update or increment the value of temp1 up to different number of counts. Else if linked list 2 is greater, then we do the same for temp2, variable temp2. Then we have a final while loop where we check whether if both the temporary pointers point to the same node. Unless and until they point to the same node, we increment temp1 is equal to temp1 of next and temp2 is equal to temp2 of next. And finally we return temp1 of data. So we can also return temp2 of data since both the temporary variables point to the same node. So we can compile our code now. Since the code is compiled, we can submit it. And it got submitted successfully. So if you found the video helpful, then do hit that like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more such upcoming videos on must-do coding questions for interview preparations. Thank you.